Hello and welcome back to another KCC video. I'm Rob and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Today we're gonna jump into some entitled parents. Our first story today comes to us from KGirl08. Entitled mother tries to keep me in special ed classes. Let's jump right in. This one is going to be a long one. In order to understand the outcome, I will need to provide a backstory that spans from birth to 6th grade before the story begins. So, spoiler alert, this is a long post. Grab a snack and get comfy. Backstory. I was born with 3 conditions that combined together gave the impression to others that I was slow. The first was that I was born cross-eyed. I spent my childhood in those very heavy, thick glasses to try and correct my eyes, and they never worked. I remember as a small toddler seeing 2 doors and trying to figure out which one to walk through, and more likely than not, I would walk into a wall. Even as an adult, my depth perception is practically non-existent, so as a small child learning to walk and navigate, the world became very difficult. The second issue was that I had severe earaches. We were talking about ear infections so bad, the outer parts of my ears would turn red and my eardrums would burst regularly. I had a difficult time hearing people when they spoke and often missed conversations, directions, and general environmental clues. The third issue was that I had an undiagnosed condition called tongue-tied. It's where the thick tissue under the tongue will prevent the full range of motion of the tongue, and so the person who suffers from it will not talk right. Just try holding your tongue with your fingers and then talking, and that is how I spoke for most of my childhood. This went undiagnosed for so long because most doctors assumed I couldn't talk correctly because I couldn't hear correctly. I was in speech therapy until I was in the 3rd grade, at which time I was somehow diagnosed correctly, underwent a simple procedure, and could talk fine after that. This meant most people perceived me as slow or mentally challenged because I couldn't walk by myself, wouldn't talk most of the time, and rarely responded when spoken to unless you were looking directly at me. As an adult, looking back, I honestly believe entitled mother was happy about my conditions because she got a lot of sympathy for how her daughter was. To make things worse, people assumed that since I was slow, that I must not understand what they are saying and would pretty much voice their opinions in front of me. I heard for most of my childhood that I was slow, mentally challenged, or blind, deaf, and dumb. I didn't know when I was very young that these terms were negative, but as I grew up, I understood most people didn't think a lot of me. Also, because of this perception, my entitled mother wouldn't bother to hide most of her evil behavior, thinking I was too stupid to understand what she was doing anyways. So fast forward to kindergarten, and I was enrolled in the school down the street from my grandparents' farm. This school was a small country school that went from K to 8th grade. When you graduated from this school, you then transferred to one of the 2 high schools available depending on where you lived. Both of these schools were complete, meaning they offered K to 12th grade education. This will be relevant later. Once enrolled, I didn't understand that I was treated differently. I was bullied because I looked funny, talked funny, and my clothes were hand-me-downs. I had no idea we were poor. I remember sitting at a different table when it was reading time, and while other kids were reading about Jane and Spot, I was coloring at a table in the corner, wondering why I couldn't read about Jane and Spot. From kindergarten to 6th grade, I made poor grades and never really participated in a lot of the lessons that my other classmates participated in. The school was small. My entire 5th grade class was the largest class in middle school, and we had 14 students. My 5th and 6th grade years were the worst for me in terms of the bullying from my classmates and even some from the teachers. I really think the teachers had endured years of dealing with entitled mother and took their frustrations out on me. I have 2 older brothers. My oldest is 3 years older and the other was 2 years older. So when I was in the 6th grade, my oldest brother was already in the high school and my other brother was in the 8th grade. When it came time for my other brother to transfer to the high school, the decision was made to go ahead and transfer me as well so that I wouldn't be left alone at the school for 2 more years. And this is where the story begins. First day of 7th grade at my new school was an experience that I will never forget. I received a schedule that said I had to move from classroom to classroom depending on the subject I was assigned. Remember, I came from a school where we were in the same class all day long for every subject. I entered the class, which was empty, picked a seat towards the center of the room, and sat down. 2 girls entered the room shortly after, just chattering away. They saw me and greeted me with a hi. I said hi back and not much else, but I was amazed they talked to me because I was used to classmates ignoring me. My first period was math, and when class started, the teacher, who will from this point be called Awesome Teacher, greeted the class and passed out the math books. I remember thinking that the math book was so big and was excited to have gotten it. Kids were talking all around me, and most of the kids had been going to school together since kindergarten. So everyone was interested in the new girl in the classroom, me. I wasn't sitting at a table in the corner. I was actually in the middle of everything. Awesome Teacher began the review process of what kids had learned the previous year, and I sat and paid attention. And for some reason, even though I had never learned the material she was discussing, everything made sense to me. We were actually assigned homework on the first day, and I left first period feeling a little overwhelmed. The rest of the day was pretty much the same, and at the end of the day, I had 2 classes that assigned homework. I got off the bus that day and ran to grandparents' house and sat at the kitchen table and proudly told naive grandmother that I had homework to do. I had never had homework before. Naive grandma was excited for me and fixed me a snack and told me homework was first before playing, so she says, "Get to work." She said this with a smile. That first week was great. Teachers would ask questions and expect that I would answer, and I was involved in assignments, and I realized quickly that my favorite subject was going to be math. I made a friend as well, so I thought things had finally turned for me. Then, midway through the second week, the principal, who will be called PR from here on out, entered the room with a piece of yellow paper in his hand. He walked over to Awesome Teacher's desk and was trying to talk to her in a low tone and was showing her the paper. I really didn't pay any attention until I heard my name. I looked up and saw Awesome Teacher with her hand on the paper, and she was looking at the principal and she said, "That's not right. Something isn't right." With that, Awesome Teacher addressed the class and told us to continue with our assignment, and she and principal left the room. After what seemed like an eternity, she came back in and went to her desk. She briefly looked my way but didn't say anything to me, and soon the class was over. I left the classroom and went to second period, wondering if I was in trouble for something. Nothing seemed out of sort until after lunch, when principal came and got me and took me to the library and had me take a seat. He told me that since I was new to the school, they were going to have me take a few tests, and that I wasn't in trouble, and that this was just a standard process for all new students. I thought, okay, and spent the rest of the afternoon taking these tests, and it felt like they were never ending. After the tests were all complete, I was asked to go ahead and work on any assignments from that morning until the end of day, which was going to be in about 25 minutes. I didn't have any assignments to work on, so I just sat there thinking the whole day was strange and really not convinced that I wasn't in trouble for something. This was on a Wednesday. Friday of that same week rolls around, and I had kind of forgotten about the events of Wednesday until I was headed for lunch and recess and saw Entitled Mother walking down the hallway and entering principal's office. Almost at the same time, Awesome Teacher flagged me down before I could go to lunch and asked me to follow her to the reception area outside the principal's office. My heart just sank, and I knew I had done something wrong. She asked me to take a seat while they spoke to Entitled Mother. I couldn't hear anything from the office at first, but soon, voices started getting raised, and I heard the following. "Who gave you permission to test my daughter?" Mumbling that I couldn't understand. "I didn't give you permission to test her. How dare you?" Talking louder now in an attempt to be heard, we needed to clear up the discrepancy. Her records didn't match most of her teacher's observation. "I don't care. She's supposed to be in the special classes." Trying to calm the Entitled Mother. "Mrs. So-and-so, we're trying to tell you that's not correct. She's..." "Don't you tell me what is correct about my daughter. She is my daughter, and I know her better than you do." "Mrs. So-and-so, I don't understand why you are so upset. You have no idea how many parents would love to be sitting in your chair, being told that their child can not only participate in normal classes, but might actually be advanced in some subjects. Her only deficiency is reading, and we are convinced that is only due to lack of education rather than a learning disability. Why are you so upset?" "I'm upset because you are all idiots. Your tests are wrong. These teachers are wrong, and I want my daughter enrolled in the same classes she had at previous school. The tests are very comprehensive and accurate. We have a plan. I don't give an F about your plan. You're going to put her in the special classes or I'm gonna pull her from school. I am in the waiting area just wishing the world would swallow me up and hoping that no one else walks by to hear what is being said. Principal takes a very deep and measured breath. Mrs. So-and-so, we can't put her in those classes. She doesn't need them. You have every right as her mother to pull her from school if that is your wish. However, he pauses for a moment. We have evidence that her education has been neglected. You need to understand that if you remove her from school, we will be required to report the issue to DHS. Did you just threaten me? No, ma'am, no threat at all. You just need to understand that she doesn't have any type of learning disability, and treating her as if she does is negligence. Therefore, we have to report that behavior. I should have never transferred her to this darn school. You are all idiots. With that, the door is flung open, and entitled mother storms out of the office. She glares at me as she literally stomps out of the reception area without a word to me and down the hall and out the door. I'm so embarrassed, almost in tears, and I'm thinking they're going to be sending me home now. I look at awesome teacher and principal, and they're looking at each other and kind of shaking their heads and looking as to say, did that just happen? Awesome teacher walks over to me and asks me to come into the office, and I'm barely holding back my tears. I sit down in the chair, and awesome teacher sits down in the chair beside me, and then she looks at principal and says, "May I?" He nodded at her, and she turns to me, and the following conversation happens. I'm very sorry that you heard that. We didn't know your mother was going to react that way. We recently took a look at your transcript from previous school, and we believed that a mistake had been made with the classes you were taking. Remember the tests you took a few days ago? Yes. Those tests confirm for us that you didn't need any special classes, and I want to tell you something very important. Looking me directly in the eyes, I want you to know that you are not dumb, and you don't have any learning issues. In fact, these tests tell us that you're pretty smart. We don't know why or how you ended up classified as you were, but we are convinced it was a mistake. With that being said, we also know that you are behind in your reading skills. You are several grades behind, but if you are willing to work with us, we have a plan to get you up to grade level. What do you think about that? Trying to wrap my head around things, but entitled mother said I was going to be pulled from school. Yeah, she said that, but while you're still enrolled with us, we would like to move forward with our plan to get you up to speed. Yes, but we need you to be on board with this plan because it will mean that you have to give up a lot of your recess and will be spending a lot of time in the library. Do you want to hear more? Feeling a little better? Yes. At this point, they laid out my educational plan and the steps that would be taken, and I barely heard a word they were saying. I had two phrases repeating in my head over and over. You are not dumb, and might actually be advanced. After years of being referred to as mentally challenged, someone was sitting in front of me telling me that I was not dumb. And then the fear that it all doesn't matter anyways because entitled mother was going to pull me out of the school. That meeting had lasted through lunch and the next period, and I was finally excused to go to fifth period. I spent the rest of the day utterly numb and dreading what waited for me when I got home. When I entered grandparents' house, I expected that entitled mother was going to be there, but she wasn't. Grandpa told me to come sit down at the table with him and naive grandma so we could talk about what happened. Apparently, naive grandma had mentioned to entitled mother how great she thought it was that I was doing homework now. Entitled mother told naive grandma that I don't do homework, and she ended up calling the school to find out why. It was on this phone call that it was discovered I was taking normal classes, not special ed. There was some kind of mix-up with my transcript because I had transferred to the school 2 years early. This prompted a look at my transcript by principal, and he started the process of getting me into special ed classes. According to my records, I had a learning disability and was not capable of functioning in normal classes. The yellow piece of paper he had given to awesome teacher was the official transfer from her class into the special ed class, and she raised the red flag that I didn't belong there. It was awesome teacher that insisted principal talk to my other teachers, and all agreed that they didn't think the records were correct. Awesome teacher further insisted that I should be tested to confirm or dispute the records. After my tests were analyzed, it was determined that I should be in normal classes, and they had called entitled mother to come in to discuss the issue of my class assignments. Entitled Mother thought she was going to the school to confirm my enrollment in special ed classes, and Awesome Teacher and Principal had gathered the test results along with my classroom work over the last week to show that I was where I needed to be. Entitled Mother obviously didn't tell Grandpa or naive Grandma the whole truth about the meeting, but upon hearing that the school thought I should be in normal classes, they felt I should stay enrolled. This was one of the few times that I actually saw my grandparents pull rank on Entitled Mother, and they wanted to give the normal classes a chance. The decision had been made that I was going to stay in school and participate in the plan that the school had come up with. I committed myself to getting up to grade on my reading, and by the time I started my 8th grade year, I was at grade level on reading and was considered one of the smartest kids in my class of 70 students. I later came to realize that the reason Entitled Mother was so upset at finding out I was smarter than she knew was because she had never bothered to hide her bad behavior from me, and I knew all of her dirty secrets. This was both a good and bad thing. The bad was that now she changed strategy and started her years-long campaign of making me out to be an unruly, lying kid. However, the good was that I spent the remainder of my school career being called Smarty Pants and Nerd. I never once took offense to those labels. I was proud of them. I graduated 9th in a class of 77 students, and it was all because Awesome Teacher didn't just take that yellow paper and say, okay. Without her persistence in getting me tested, I wouldn't have the life I have today, where everyone who meets me thinks I'm a very smart person. Thank you, Awesome Teacher, wherever you are, you changed my life. So one thing that got me thinking throughout this was that there might have been some kind of financial incentive for Entitled Mother to take care of a child with special needs, but OP kinda cleared this up in a comment. Well, kinda. It says, I have noticed several comments asking about if Entitled Mother received any money from me for being in special education. The short answer is, I don't know. I don't believe that I was ever officially diagnosed with a learning disability, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been difficult for her to have done that when she would have had medical records of my eyes, ears, and speech issues. I do know that she received food stamps and did get some sort of assistance, but I don't know how much or where that assistance came from. It's quite possible that she did get assistance on my behalf, but I just don't know. What I do know is that whatever she got, she spent on herself and cried poor to my grandparents because they paid all the bills at both houses, and they grew a garden every year to help feed us all, and she never paid rent or gave them a dime. I hope this answered your questions, and thank you all for your kind words. I don't think we realize just how much of an impact some of these teachers have on our lives. Some of them want nothing more than to help you succeed, and this one, OP, was absolutely amazing. Now, I'm not sure how old you are at this point, but one thing to remember is you can't pick the family that you're born into, but when you're a little bit older and that family isn't working for you, you can write them off, go no contact, and have so much better of a life. OP, I think you'd be a great candidate for that. So we're starting to ramp up the KCC Discord, so if you're not a member there yet, click the link in the description down below. It's completely free. You can come over and say hi to me. I'm in there every day, along with a bunch of members of the KCC community. It's a great quiet spot where we can talk about the KCC stories or anything else that's going on in our lives. I look forward to seeing you there. Link at the top of the description down below. Check out the OP for this story, KGirl08, listed in the description down below. I thank you for watching, have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.